Hey, I'm back. Happy New Year. Today, I want to show you how you can take a single drum hit and turn it into a drum ensemble. I know if you're like me, you love that sound of lots of drums hitting together, but unfortunately, it's hard to do, record it yourself, and buying the samples are great, but also they're expensive. So, I want to show you how you can do it with something you already have. I'm using MDrummer here, but you could use Contact Library, you could use Easy Drummer, Addictive Drums, Steven Slate Drums, whatever you have. So let's get started. I'm going to start with this sound. It's just a floor tom. There we go. And we have floor tom here. Just do quarter notes. I'm going to just do this so I can adjust it on the fly. I just need that little loop there. But that's not the trick yet. What we need to do is we actually are going to use MUnison. So if I open this up here, find my MUnison, turn this on. So let's go about making this from scratch. So I'll put MUnison up here. I'll start with 4 voices, that's fine. The dry wet control, I'll keep below pitch, and I'm going to turn that off. I like to set the wet dry around like 70 so I can actually hear some of the dry sound. I want to hear the transient, but I also want the other voices to be loud enough that I can hear them. Go into the pitch here. I want to set that around 50 or so, I think is good. Variation, we don't need any variation on this, so set that to 0. Everything else I'll leave as it is. Stereo, what I want to do here is set it to around 50%. You can set that however you want, but I think setting it at 100% is just a little bit too wide for me. Formats, I don't really need the variation on them, so let me set this to around 50 for the depth, variation off, etc. The most important part is actually the time. So with 4 voices, I think around 60 or 70 is where I like to start, and then from there I'll mess with the other things like the shape or the variation. But let's hear what that sounds like. I'll start with it off and then I'll turn it on halfway through. So I think it's sounding pretty good already, but I want it a little bit tighter, so I'm going to adjust the time here. That's pretty good. So, this is what I want, but I know you're thinking, okay, it's 4 voices, but what if I want more? Like, how many can MUnison do? You can do up to 50, but I recommend not going that high with percussion. But let's try 8. If you double-click it, you can set it in manually here. If you twist it like this, sometimes you get those weird numbers like 10.22. I don't even know what that means. I don't know what a 22 hundredths of a voice sounds like, but anyways, let's keep going. So let's try 8 now. We're probably gonna have to adjust some things, but let's hear it. Hear that like fast flaming? I don't like that. So the way to kind of get rid of that is adjust the time and the shape. We need to move it up. So the more voices you have, generally you're gonna have to increase the time. Okay, and another thing you might want to check out is the spectral settings. Seems kind of like a hidden parameter, but this is, I believe, FFT based, fast Fourier transform. And the way those work is usually if the buffer size is high, it preserves the note value very well, but the transient sounds like weird. And if you move it down lower, the transient sounds good, but the note value doesn't sound good. So you have to set it according to the material you're using. So I'll put it up at the highest setting, the buffer size of the highest, and let you hear how that sounds. You hear that whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. That is what happens when your buffer size is way too high. Now let's try it at 256. So now you can hear the transient, but you hear that whoa, whoa, whoa in the background, which I don't like. So for me, I think the best setting is around 1024. I think that's the best compromise. Okay. Now we can adjust this more. We could add more voices, but eventually we're going to get to a point to where we're going to have to increase the time so much, it's not going to sound good, in my opinion. It's going to sound too loose. So let's try 16 voices and try to adjust the time, etc. That's sounding okay, but still it's starting to get a little bit too loose. But there's a way to do this if you want to use more voices. I suggest using the harmonizer. So now, enable the harmonizer. Let's just use 3. And now you see here, one note is going to be our original note. This one is going to be up 3 semitones, since I'm setting it chromatic. And the other one's going to be down 5 semitones. So I'll let you hear how this sounds. This sounds like those epic drums you hear on like trailers or something. Okay, let me do a little bit more interesting pattern than that. Let's try one of the Euclidean rhythms. If you don't know what Euclidean rhythms are, check out my video. I explain it, but I think it sounds better than this, just straight quarter notes. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So let's try a pattern like this. Okay, there you go. But let's say we want something else. This winter, a company with Rast Sound gave away these low drum samples for free. So we have some here. So let's try loading some up. Because these are more like the epic drums you usually would want to use, as opposed to this floor tom, which I was using before. It's just a normal floor tom that comes with any drum set. It didn't load. Here we go. There we go. Let me make sure I have this bypassed. And let's just listen to the drum by itself. That's not what I want. Let's try something else here. That's a little bit too high. That's good. That's closer to what I want. So now let's try this with MUnison on and see how it sounds. That's sounding pretty good to me. That's closer to what I want. The volume was down a little bit low for me, but of course you can fix that with just a fader if you want. And of course you could do any kind of processing, etc. after this. And I could do more than 16 voices here, but I think 16 is more than enough, number one. And number two, I think if you're going to do that, it's better to use 2 different drums. Like I might combine that first floor tom sample with that second Rast sound low tom sample and put an instance of MUnison on each channel. So I'm using just a single channel here, but I'd probably split this out in multi-channel normally. And I think that will give you something better, and then tune each instance of MUnison for each particular sample. So I hope that gave you some ideas of what you can do with this. If you think, I don't want to go through and make this thing every time, the easiest one is they have a bunch of different drum ensemble patches here. If you want to hear these, I'll go through a few of them. One of them kind of had like a wavy sound, like wham, wham, wham. And that's why you had to adjust things. I think it had probably too much variation in the delay or something. And it'll also depend on your sample. So some samples will be, completely fine. Some of them will have some kind of rumbling in them that will not be very apparent when there's one drum, but then when you multiply it, you have all sorts of rumbling. So you might have to use a lower high pass filter or any kind of other EQ on it. But of course, you probably know how to take care of that, don't you? I hope so. Anyways, that's it for today. If you like this, give me a thumbs up. Also, subscribe if you haven't done that. And until next time, see you.